The restaurant was made of glass and gold. Le Croissant. Table 7 sat Julian Voss, billionaire, genius, and self-proclaimed architect of the future. The kind of man whose watch cost as much as a college education. He leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his latest stock repo. "So, gentlemen, here's the difference between me and everyone else," he said, tapping the screen of his brand-new Voss Tech Apex phone. "I build what others can't afford. People love to pretend they—" The table laughed. Across the room, a young waitress balanced a tray of champagne flutes. Her name was Amelia Reed, 25 years old. She'd been working since morning, and her back ached with the kind of exhaustion you stop feeling after a while. The restaurant's lights bounced off the tape, holding together the cracked corner of her old phone, tucked in her apron. It buzzed every "Hey, Amelia, Amelie." She approached table 7 with steady hands. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Le Croissant. Can I get you started with—" Julian didn't even look up. "Water, sparkling, and make sure it's cold this time." "Yes, sir." Her voice was polite, almost too polite. He glanced up briefly, his eyes catching the faint glow from her phone screen. "Tell me that's not your phone," he said, smirking. Amelia blinked. "Excuse me." "That thing," he pointed. "That prehistoric brick in your pocket. What is it? A museum piece?" The table erupted in laughter. Her fingers tightened on the tray. "It still works," she said quietly. Julian's grin widened. "I'm sure it does. Probably needs coal to charge, though." More laughter. Even the waiter passing behind her chuckled awkwardly. Amelia nodded, her cheeks burning, and turned away. She'd been humiliated before, by rude customers, drunk businessmen, the endless grind of being invisible. But something about his tone hit a nerve. Maybe it was the way he said prehistoric, like she was the fossil. Back in the kitchen, she set the tray down and stared at the cracked phone. Her reflection shimmered across the broken glass. That phone wasn't just plastic and metal. It was memory. It was her late mother singing lullabies in videos she couldn't back up, her little brother's hospital app, her lifeline to the only family she had left. Jess leaned against the counter. "Don't let it get to you. He's just another rich jerk." "Yeah," Amelia whispered, "but jerks like him run the world." Out in the dining room, Julian Voss raised his glass, toasting his latest deal, oblivious to the storm he'd just set in motion. He had no idea that the same broke phone he mocked tonight would soon show him something money couldn't buy, something that would tear open the past he'd buried for decades. Amelia wiped her hands, took a deep breath, and walked back out with his order. Her smile was calm now, but behind it, a spark had been lit, and soon that spark would burn through everything Julian Voss believed about power, family, and truth. The next morning, the city was grey and restless, a kind of heaviness that matched the fog in Amelia's mind. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard his laughter again. That sharp, careless sound of someone who'd never been told no in his life. Her phone buzzed against the nightstand. The screen flickered, cracked like a spiderweb. Hospital billing. Payment overdue. Her stomach tightened. She scrolled down to another notification. A voicemail from Dr. Patel, her brother's doctor. "Amelia," his voice said gently, "we've been trying to reach you. Evan's treatment can't continue without the next installment. Please call us." She set the phone down and pressed her palms to her face. Evan was only 16. A rare heart condition had turned his life into a waiting room of needles, beeping monitors, and hope that ran on credit. Every dollar she made went into keeping that hope alive. Every insult, every long night on her feet, it all had a reason. "Morning, sis." Evan's voice drifted from the couch in the living room. He grinned weakly, wrapped in a blanket. "You look like a zombie." She forced a laugh. "You're one to talk. How's the pain today?" "Better. Maybe the meds are finally doing their job." She poured him some cereal, the cheap kind, mostly sugar and air, and handed it over. "Don't forget your pills." "Yes, Mom?" He gave her a mock salute, and for a brief moment, the heaviness lifted. Then her phone buzzed again. Another reminder, another number she couldn't pay. She looked at it like it was a living thing, fragile but loyal. The screen protector was shattered, the back cover chipped, yet it had never failed her. It carried her mother's voice, her brother's laughter, her late father's final message. Everything that mattered lived inside that battered little device. When her mother died 6 years ago, she'd whispered a single sentence to Amelia in the hospital bed. Take care of him, and never lose the phone. Back then, it had sounded like a strange request. Now it felt like a prophecy. The ringtone broke her thoughts. A call from her manager, Frank. "Reed, where the hell are you? You're on the morning shift." Amelia glanced at the clock. 8:45. "I thought I was on nights this week." "Well, now you're on mornings too. We're short-staffed. And don't bring that attitude or you'll be short on hours." Click. She sighed, slipped on her shoes, and grabbed her bag. Evan looked up. "Hey, don't forget your phone." She smiled faintly. "Wouldn't dream of it." The subway was packed and loud, the air thick with the smell of burnt coffee and exhaustion. Amelia held onto the pole, her thumb brushing the worn edges of her phone case. It buzzed again. A push notification from Voss Tech. Upgrade to the new Apex X for only $1,099. She stared at it for a long time, the irony stinging. Julian Voss's empire was built on devices like this, luxury machines that told the world who was important and who wasn't. She tucked it away. Let him have his towers and yachts, she thought. I just need this phone to survive one more month. When she finally stepped through the heavy doors of Le Croissant, the smell of polish and truffle oil hit her like a wall. Another day, another performance. But something inside her had shifted since last night. A small, invisible fracture. Julian Voss might never remember the waitress he mocked, but Amelia remembered every word. And the next time their worlds collided, she wouldn't stay silent. She'd make sure he remembered her name. By the time the evening rush began, Le Croissant looked like something out of a movie. Waiters gliding between tables, champagne bottles cracking open, laughter rising over the soft jazz drifting from the piano. But beneath the glitter, there was tension. That same quiet pressure that always came when a billionaire booked the house's best table. Julian Voss had returned. He arrived the way storms do, without warning, bringing wind and silence all at once. His entourage followed. 2 investors, a PR consultant, and a woman in a white suit who looked more expensive than the chandelier above them. "Table 7, Frank whispered to Amelia, pressing a fresh order pad into her hand. "Smile. Speak when spoken to, and don't mess up. This guy tips in headlines." Amelia nodded. Her heart thumped once, hard. She hadn't expected to see Julian again so soon. When she approached, he was already mid-story. "You know the secret to staying rich?" he said, leaning back with his whiskey. "Find out what people can't afford, then sell it to them at double the price." His friends laughed obediently. "Good evening," Amelia began, keeping her voice steady. "Welcome back to Le Croissant. May I start you with—" Julian glanced up, recognition flickering in his eyes. "You again?" She nodded. "Yes, sir. I'll be your server tonight." "Well," he said dryly, "let's hope you've upgraded your phone since last time." Laughter again, the kind that cuts deeper because it sounds light. Amelia forced a polite smile. "Still works fine, sir. Better than most things I can't afford to replace." One of the investors, a round man with a heavy gold watch, chuckled. "She's got some attitude, Julian. You hire her for marketing?" Julian smirked. "Not unless she can sell antique phones." Her fingers tightened on the notepad, but she held her composure. "We have a special on the ribeye tonight," she said softly. "It's aged, like fine technology." A few guests coughed back laughter. Julian's eyes narrowed for a split second before he waved dismissively. "Fine. Ribeye. And bring a bottle of the Chateau Margaux." "Yes, sir." As she walked away, she heard the woman in white whisper, "You should be nicer to staff. Cameras are everywhere these days." Julian scoffed. Let them film. The internet loves a villain until they need a new phone. Amelia's jaw clenched. Let them film, she thought. Maybe this time someone actually will. In the kitchen, she set down the order. Jess glanced up from the counter. You okay? You look like you swallowed a lemon. He's worse in person, Amelia muttered. Jess snorted. They all are. Guys like that think their wallets make them gods. As she waited for the steak to finish, Amelia checked her phone again. A text from the hospital. Urgent. Please call regarding your brother's status. She swallowed hard, typed a quick reply, and slid it back into her pocket before Frank saw. When she returned to the dining room, Julian was watching the woman in white scroll through her tablet. You're too generous with staff bonuses, he told her. Gratitude is weakness in business. Maybe compassion is good, Pete, she replied, her tone clipped. Julian smirked. Compassion doesn't raise stock value. He looked up again as Amelia placed the steak in front of him. Their eyes met. For the first time, she didn't look away. Enjoy your meal, sir, she said, voice calm but edged with something firm, almost defiant. He studied her face for a long moment, then returned to his plate as if she didn't exist. But she did. And that night, in a restaurant made of glass and gold, a waitress with nothing had just started a quiet war with a man who had everything. Neither of them knew how personal that war would become. Julian Voss never tolerated silence. In his world, silence meant uncertainty, and uncertainty meant weakness. But tonight, for the first time in years, a waitress's quiet defiance had left him strangely unsettled. Her calm eyes, the steadiness of her voice, the faint sting of irony when she said fine technology. It had all landed like a pebble against his fortress of control. He didn't like it. Who trained that girl? He muttered to his PR director, Erica Lane, between bites of steak. Staff should know better than to joke with clients. Erica dabbed her lips with a napkin. She didn't joke, Julian. She made a point. You humiliated her in front of everyone yesterday. Julian laughed. If she can't handle a little teasing, she shouldn't work here. Teasing? Erica raised an eyebrow. You publicly mocked her phone, and by extension, her life. You're lucky nobody filmed it. Julian's smirk faltered for a second. Then he waved her off. You worry too much. People love me. They buy whatever I make. Erica sighed quietly. Until they don't. Across the room, Amelia worked her tables with precision. She avoided Julian's gaze, but her focus never wavered. Her mind was on Evan, on the text she'd received from the hospital just before the dinner rush. Condition worsening. Please contact us immediately. She had called during her break. The nurse's voice was kind, but firm. The new medication Evan needed wasn't covered by insurance. $10,000, due this week. She had thanked the nurse, hung up, and forced herself not to cry. She couldn't afford tears, not when she still had to smile for strangers who'd tip based on how invisible she could be. Table 9, Amelia, Frank barked. They're asking for more wine. On it, she replied. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she lifted the bottle. At table 7, Julian raised his glass for another toast. To innovation, and to the people who can afford it. The laughter that followed felt like static. Amelia froze mid-step. She wasn't even part of the conversation, but somehow the words landed on her like an insult meant only for her. She placed the wine at table 9, then leaned against the service counter, taking slow breaths. Jess passed by and whispered, Ignore him. He's poison in a suit. But Amelia couldn't ignore it. She glanced at the clock. 3 more hours until closing. 3 more hours until she could breathe again. When she returned to table 7 to clear plates, Julian was showing off his new phone, its glass body gleaming like a trophy. The Apex X, he said, voice full of pride. Most secure device on the market. It can read your DNA to unlock. One of the investors whistled. That's wild, so no one can ever steal from you. Julian grinned. Exactly. Only I can open it. As Amelia leaned forward to collect the dishes, the phone's reflective surface caught her face, and something inside her sparked. her cracked old phone in her pocket, his luxury device worth thousands. Two sides of the same coin. One built for survival, the other for vanity. Julian caught her looking. "Curious?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Not really. My phone already knows everything I need to live." The words were soft, but hit like a slap. His jaw tightened. Erica looked between them, uneasy. Julian finally chuckled, though there was no humor in it. "You should write ads for me, sweetheart. I'll give you a discount." "I couldn't afford it," she said, and walked away before he could reply. Erica exhaled. "You're losing your charm, Julian." He frowned. "No, I'm losing patience." But deep down, something else was breaking. Something he'd spent years pretending he didn't have. He didn't know it yet, but that waitress and her broke phone were about to expose a truth worth more than his entire empire. Friday night came like a storm. The restaurant overflowed with expensive perfume, laughter, and the clinking of crystal glasses. It was the kind of night where tips were good, but pride was cheap. Julian Voss was back again. This time, he wasn't alone. The city's financial press had tagged along, invited for what he called a casual celebration of success. It was a show, and Julian loved an audience. Frank pulled Amelia aside before the shift started. "He's at table 7 again. Whatever he says, you smile and agree. Got it?" "Got it," she said, tying her apron tighter than usual. Inside, Julian already had his stage set. Wine poured, cameras hovering discreetly, laughter echoing too loud. His white suit gleamed under the chandelier like polished ice. Amelia approached, pad in hand. "Good evening, Mr. Voss. What can I get you tonight?" Julian looked up with that same half-smile. "Ah, my favorite waitress. Still running on that old fossil of a phone?" A ripple of laughter moved through the table. She stayed calm. "It's still alive, sir. Guess it's built to last." "Oh, I doubt that," he said, leaning back. "Why don't you show everyone? Let's see what prehistoric tech looks like." Her chest tightened. "I don't think," he interrupted, voice rising. "Come on, don't be shy. Let's compare it to the Apex X. Might be good publicity." The others grinned, waiting for a spectacle. Amelia hesitated. Every instinct told her to walk away, but rent was due, her brother was sick, and Frank's eyes across the room were begging her to comply. Slowly, she pulled the phone from her apron pocket. The screen was cracked, the corners scuffed, tape holding it together. She placed it gently on the table like something sacred. Julian lifted his own phone beside it, the glass flawless, gleaming under the light. "There," he said proudly. "Progress and poverty side by side." The laughter came again, louder this time. Cameras flashed. "Sir," Amelia said softly, "that's not fair." He smirked. "Fairness is a myth. Winners build the world. The rest just serve the drinks." Her throat burned, but she forced her voice steady. "Maybe. But sometimes the world needs a refill." A hush fell. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Julian chuckled, pretending it hadn't stung. "Cute. I'll give you that." He turned to the reporters. "See, even the staff are getting witty. Guess they learn fast when they work around success." Her hands trembled as she cleared the table, jaw tight. Frank motioned for her to keep moving, but she couldn't. The humiliation was heavy, almost physical. She could feel every eye on her, the investors, the guests, the flashes. She straightened her back, forcing herself to breathe. "Would you like dessert, sir?" Julian smirked. "Surprise me." She nodded, turned, and walked toward the kitchen, every step sharp, deliberate. Inside, she gripped the counter, blinking hard. Jess appeared beside her, whispering, "You okay?" Amelia swallowed. "He wants dessert." Jess frowned. "After what he just did?" Amelia nodded. "Yeah, let him eat. He'll choke on it eventually." When she returned with the tiramisu, Julian was mid-story, laughing with his guests. He didn't even notice her approach. She placed the dish down gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "Enjoy, sir." He waved her away like a shadow. But across the room, Erica Lane, his PR director, watched in silence. Her expression was unreadable, part pity, part anger. She leaned toward Julian. "That clip's going to haunt you." He smirked. "Please. People forget fast." Erica's eyes stayed on Amelia. "Not everyone does." And at that moment, one of the guests quietly hit record. The humiliation wasn't ending. It was just beginning. The night after the humiliation, the video hit the internet like a spark in dry grass. It began as a 30-second clip on a small news blog. Billionaire mocks waitress's phone. By morning, it was everywhere. The clip showed Julian's grin, the laughter of his table, and Amelia's trembling hands as she placed her old phone on the linen cloth. The comments section exploded. "Imagine being that rich and that cruel. That waitress handled it better than I ever could. Cancel Voss Tech!" Julian Voss woke to the sound of chaos, his phone vibrating non-stop on the marble nightstand of his penthouse. He blinked against the grey light filtering through the curtains, grabbed the device and scrolled through headlines. His name was trending, but not in the way he liked. Erica Lane's voice came through the speaker before he could even call her. "We've got a PR disaster. The board wants an emergency statement. People are threatening to boycott the launch." Julian rubbed his temples. "It's a stupid internet tantrum. It'll blow over." "It won't," Erica said sharply. "You insulted a working-class woman on camera. This isn't just bad optics, Julian. This is character assassination, self-inflicted." He got up, poured himself a black coffee, and stared at the skyline. "So what do you suggest? Apologize to some waitress for having a sense of humor?" "Yes," Erica snapped. "That's exactly what I suggest." He didn't answer. He didn't like being told what to do. Not by shareholders, not by the press, and certainly not by his conscience. Across town, Amelia sat on her small couch, phone buzzing non-stop. Messages flooded in from co-workers, friends, strangers. Some offered sympathy. Others wanted interviews. One text came from an unknown number. "You embarrassed him. Be careful." She set the phone down, her pulse quickening. "I didn't embarrass anyone," she whispered. "He did that himself." Evan looked up from the blanket-covered couch, a soft smile tugging at his pale face. "You're famous, sis." She laughed once, bitterly. "Yeah, that's great. Maybe fame will pay the hospital bills." His hand found hers. "You didn't do anything wrong." "I know," she sighed. "But people like him, they always find a way to make the rest of us pay for their mistakes." At Voss Tech headquarters, the boardroom was in meltdown. Half the executives demanded damage control. The other half were already discussing succession plans. Julian slammed a report onto the table. "I built this company from scratch. You think one viral clip is going to destroy me?" One director leaned forward. "Public image is the company, Julian. Your arrogance is costing us billions." Erica sat quietly, arms folded. When the meeting ended, she approached him. "You're bleeding, Julian. Stop pretending you can't feel it." He looked at her coldly. "You think I care about opinions from people who can't afford my products?" Erica's voice softened. "You used to care about people, period. Before all this." He turned away. "That man's dead." That night, he went out alone. No entourage, no security detail. He ended up outside Le Croissant, standing under the neon sign that flickered in the drizzle. Through the glass, he saw Amelia cleaning a table, her hair tied back, the same cracked phone lighting up in her apron pocket. For the first time, he felt something unfamiliar. Not guilt, exactly, but recognition. A mirror held up to the worst part of himself. Inside, Amelia looked up and saw him standing outside. Their eyes met through the rain-streaked glass. Neither moved. Julian's reflection blurred, distorted by water and neon light, a billionaire dissolving in his own reflection. By dawn, he'd decide to confront her again, but not to apologize. He wanted answers about that phone, that video, and why the sound of her voice wouldn't leave his head. The rain hadn't stopped all day. By the time Amelia arrived for her shift, her coat was soaked through, and the air inside Le Crescent felt heavy, humid, almost electric. Everyone was whispering. The viral video had made the restaurant infamous overnight. Paparazzi waited outside like vultures. Frank barked orders to the staff, his voice sharp with panic. "Phones away. No selfies, no comments to reporters," he warned. "And for God's sake, if Julian Voss shows up, act normal." Amelia froze. "He's coming back?" Frank gave a weary look. "Apparently he booked the same table. Says he wants privacy, on privacy." "Right." She took a deep breath and tied her apron. "Fine. I'll take him." Jess gaped. "After what happened?" "Someone has to." The clock hit 7. Outside, flashes from camera phones lit up the rain-soaked windows. A black car pulled up, and Julian stepped out, wearing a dark trench coat, his expression unreadable. When he walked in, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. He wasn't smiling. He didn't look like the smug billionaire from the video. He looked tired, haunted even. "Good evening, Mr. Voss," Amelia said softly, approaching his table. "Welcome back." He met her eyes. "You're braver than your manager. He looked ready to faint when I asked for you." "Occupational hazard," she replied. "People panic when billionaires start trending." He almost smiled. "I didn't come to fight." "Then what did you come for?" He leaned back, studying her. "To talk, and to see that phone again." Her hand instinctively went to her apron pocket. "Why?" "Because," he said slowly, "I can't get it out of my head. The way you held it. Like it was sacred." She hesitated. "It kind of is." Julian gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit for a minute. I'm not here to humiliate you." Frank's voice echoed from across the room. "Reed, table 7 doesn't pay you to chat." Julian raised a hand. "It's fine, put it on my bill." Amelia sat, cautious. "You realize people are filming from outside, right?" "I don't care anymore." He leaned forward. "I need to know what's on that phone." Her eyes narrowed. "It's just my life. My mom's videos, my brother's medical records, stuff you can't replace." He looked genuinely confused. "Videos?" She unlocked it and held it out. "You asked to see. So look." The cracked screen flickered to life. A video thumbnail showed a woman sitting in a sunlit kitchen, singing softly while a baby laughed in the background. Amelia hit play. The melody filled the small space between them, sweet, haunting, familiar. Julian's breath caught. The woman in the video turned toward the camera, her smile bright, her voice gentle. Julian's hand trembled. "That song," Amelia frowned. "You know it?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on the screen. The woman's face, the curve of her cheek, the way her hair fell, was unmistakable. He swallowed hard. "Who was she?" "My mother," Amelia said quietly. "Lena Reed." Julian's face drained of color. The room seemed to tilt around him. "Lena," he whispered. Amelia blinked. "You knew her?" He didn't respond. He just kept staring at the video until it ended. The silence between them was thick, unbearable. Finally, he looked up, his voice barely a whisper. "I think she was my sister." Amelia's breath caught. The air vanished from her lungs. Julian's hand pressed against the table, knuckles white. "And that means," he looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. "That means you're my niece." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of rain tapping against the windows filled the silence. Amelia stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. "My niece?" she repeated, disbelief in her voice. "That's insane. My mum never mentioned any brother, certainly not a billionaire one." Julian's hands shook slightly as he rubbed his temples. "She wouldn't have. She disappeared 25 years ago. My sister, Lena, ran away after a fight with our father. We searched for her for years. Then stopped." Amelia's pulse pounded in her ears. "That doesn't make sense. My mum said her family died in an accident before I was born." Julian's voice lowered. She lied to protect you, and maybe to protect herself. The words felt heavy, too large for the space between them. Amelia stood up, shaking her head. No. My mum worked 3 jobs. We lived paycheck to paycheck. You think someone with you as a brother would have to live like that? Julian didn't rise. She didn't want my money, Amelia. She wanted freedom. Our father controlled everything. When she fell in love with a mechanic, he disowned her. I was just a kid. I didn't understand. I stayed and became what he wanted. She left and became happy. Amelia's throat tightened. She wasn't happy. She got sick. She died before she could even see me graduate. That's not happiness. Julian looked down. Maybe not. But it was hers. The restaurant was emptying out for the night, the soft hum of jazz replaced by the sound of dishes clinking in the kitchen. Frank pretended to wipe a counter nearby, but his eyes never left the 2 of them. He knew better than to interrupt. Amelia sat back down slowly, her hands trembling. You really think my mum was your sister? Julian nodded. That video, the song she sang, she used to hum that to me when I was little, every night. I haven't heard it in decades. She stared at him. His certainty scared her. It felt like the world she knew was tilting, everything slipping into place and yet falling apart. Julian's gaze softened. I'm sorry for what I said to you that night. I had no idea. I was cruel. Amelia exhaled shakily. You didn't need to know we were related to treat me like a person. That hit him harder than any headline ever could. His mouth opened, but no words came. She continued, voice trembling. You think money gives you power, but it doesn't. It just hides what's broken. My mum used to say, there's no price tag on dignity. Guess she learned that lesson the hard way. Julian looked genuinely ashamed. You're right. For the first time, the arrogance was gone. The man sitting before her wasn't the tech giant or the ruthless CEO. He was just a brother who had lost someone, too. Amelia picked up her phone again, scrolling to another folder of videos. Here, she said quietly. There's more. The screen glowed softly as a second clip began. This one showed Lena holding baby Amelia, whispering, You'll never need anyone but love. Julian covered his mouth, fighting the tremor in his jaw. She's gone, he said, his voice cracking for the first time. And all that's left of her is you. Tears blurred Amelia's vision. So what now? Julian took a long breath. Now, I try to fix what I destroyed. He stood up, his eyes glistening under the soft light. You deserve better than the world I mocked you for surviving. And I can't change the past, but I can start with this, your brother's hospital bills, your future, whatever you need. Please let me help. Amelia stared at him, torn between fury and grief. You think you can fix 25 years with money? He hesitated. No, but it's all I have to offer. She shook her head slowly. Then you still don't understand? Julian's shoulders dropped. The distance between them wasn't measured in space. It was measured in decades of silence and regret. And as he walked out into the rain, neither of them realized that the world outside had already seen the video and was waiting for part 2 of their story to explode. The rain had stopped by morning, but the city still felt damp and heavy, like it hadn't caught its breath after the storm. Amelia sat at her small kitchen table, her cracked phone glowing faintly between a stack of unpaid bills and an empty coffee mug. The video folder was still open, her mother's face frozen mid-laugh. She watched the clip again, then again. She didn't cry this time. The shock had numbed her. Somewhere deep inside, her mind was still replaying Julian's words from last night. She was my sister. Evan shuffled into the room, rubbing his eyes. You're up early, he said, yawning. I didn't sleep. He frowned. Bad night at work? Amelia hesitated. You could say that. She turned the phone toward him. Do you remember this video? He nodded. Yeah. Mom used to sing that song all the time. Why? Amelia's voice shook slightly. Because someone I work for said she was his sister. Evan blinked. Wait, what? Like, blood-related? Apparently. She gave a humorless laugh, which would make him our uncle. Evan stared at her, wide-eyed. You mean the phone guy? The one who went viral for being a jerk? Yeah, him. Evan sat down slowly, still trying to process it. That's crazy, Amelia. Are you sure he's not just lying? I wish he were. Her phone buzzed then. A new message. Unknown number again. Come to the address below. I'll explain everything. Jay. She closed her eyes, exhaling. He's not done. Evan frowned. Are you going to go? She looked at her brother's pale face, the dark circles under his eyes. I have to. Mom deserves to be heard, even if she's gone. An hour later, Amelia stood outside a tall glass tower, Voss Tech headquarters. The building stretched into the clouds, cold and gleaming. Security eyed her suspiciously until Julian appeared in the lobby, waving her through. Thank you for coming, he said quietly, as the elevator doors shut behind them. She crossed her arms. I didn't do it for you. I know. He pressed the top floor button. But you should see what I found. The elevator rose silently, the city shrinking below them. When the doors opened, Julian led her into his private office. Walls of glass, a view that made the skyline look small. On the massive desk sat a worn leather box. I went through my mother's things, he said, opening it. After Lena left, she never spoke about her again. But she kept this. Inside were faded photographs. A girl with bright eyes and auburn hair, smiling beside a boy who looked like a younger Julian. Amelia reached out, tracing the edges. That's her, she whispered. Julian nodded. She used to hum that song when she worked on my first prototypes. She was an artist. Brilliant. Patient. My father said art didn't make money, so I became his mirror image instead. He looked at Amelia, guilt carved into every word. You inherited her eyes, her voice. You don't need proof beyond that. Amelia swallowed hard. Why tell me this? To make yourself feel better? He shook his head. Because you deserve to know where you come from, and because there's something else. He slid a folder across the desk. Our company's new phone model, the one I mocked you with, she helped design the original blueprint 25 years ago. Her initials are still in the code. Amelia froze. You're saying she built the first version of Voss Tech? Julian nodded slowly. And I've been living off her genius ever since. Her breath caught. The truth hit like a wave. Her mother hadn't been just another worker, another single mom fighting bills. She was the foundation of the empire that had humiliated her daughter. Julian leaned forward. You have her courage. Use it. Tell her story. The world should know. Amelia stared at him, then at the phone in her hand. You're right. The world will know. Her reflection shimmered on the cracked glass. Steady, unbroken. Because the truth wasn't just inside that phone anymore. It was about to go public. Julian sat behind his sleek glass desk, the skyline of New York gleaming behind him, but the usual pride he felt staring out at it was gone. For the first time in years, the city looked smaller, fragile, almost human. Across from him sat Amelia, her arms folded, that same cracked phone resting on her lap like a loaded weapon. I need you to understand something, Julian began, his voice low. When Lena left, our father told everyone she was dead. He erased her. From the company, from our family records, from everything. I didn't fight him. I was a coward. Amelia's gaze stayed fixed on him. You let her vanish. You let him erase her. He nodded once. Yes. The word landed like a hammer between them. Julian turned toward the window. You have to realize, I was young. desperate to prove myself. My father was ruthless. He believed weakness was contagious. I built this empire in his image, and now it's devouring me." Amelia leaned forward, voice sharp. "You didn't just inherit his cruelty, Julian. You perfected it. You mocked a waitress for being poor while living off the ideas of a woman you abandoned." He winced. "You're right. I'm not saying it for guilt," she said, her tone steady. "I'm saying it because the truth matters. My mother spent her life believing she wasn't enough. You made her ghost live that lie twice." He opened his mouth, then stopped. He had no defense. After a long silence, Julian reached into his drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. "This," he said, sliding it across the table, "is what's left of her design work. Her name, her real name, was never credited. The board doesn't even know she existed." Amelia looked at the pages, schematics, handwritten notes, sketches of early phone concepts. The handwriting was delicate but firm. At the bottom of one blueprint, a single line stood out in pencil. "Technology should connect hearts, not sell power." Her throat tightened. "She wrote this," Julian nodded, eyes misting. "I built my entire legacy on a lie. I used her dream and turned it into a machine for profit." Amelia's voice softened. "Then why tell me now?" He stared down at the floor. "Because when I saw you stand up to me, I saw her again. I realized I've spent my whole life running from the only person who ever mattered. Maybe this is the only way I can make peace with it." Amelia looked down at the phone in her hands. "You can't rewrite the past, Julian. But you can't hide from it anymore, either." He took a slow breath. "I don't want to hide. I want to fix it. I'll publicly credit Lena as the co-founder. She deserves that." She shook her head. "You can't just make a press release and expect forgiveness. This isn't about money or headlines. It's about doing what's right, without expecting applause." He met her eyes. "Then tell me what's right." She stood, gripping the cracked phone. "You start by admitting it to the world, not from a stage, from your heart, and not because it's good because it's true." Julian swallowed hard, something flickering behind his usually guarded expression. "If I do this, it could destroy Voss Tech. Then maybe it deserves to fall." The silence stretched between them again, thick with old ghosts and unspoken grief. Julian finally nodded. "You sound just like her." Amelia turned toward the door, her reflection glowing faintly in the glass. "Good," she said quietly, "because she deserves to be heard." As she left, Julian stared at the blueprints on his desk, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about profit. He was thinking about redemption. By Monday morning, the world was already shifting under Julian Voss's feet. The headlines had turned sharper, the news cycle faster. Every outlet ran the same story. Billionaire CEO humiliates waitress, then claims she's family. No one knew the full truth yet, but everyone wanted blood. Inside the marble halls of Voss Tech headquarters, chaos reigned. Reporters crowded the front lobby. Protesters waved signs that read "Compassion Capital" and "Pay the people who built you." Erica Lane, his PR director, stood outside the glass boardroom, pacing. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, phone glued to her ear. "I told you, we're drafting a response," she hissed into the receiver. "No, he's not giving another interview. Yes, he's alive. For now." She hung up, exhaled, and pushed open the door. The boardroom was a war zone of voices, 12 directors, all shouting at once. Stock projections, legal threats, PR fallout. The words blended into noise. Julian sat at the head of the table, silent, watching his empire unravel piece by piece. One of the older board members slammed a folder onto the table. "Julian, you've become a liability. This isn't just bad press, it's tanking our shares." Another added, "You've got protesters outside, sponsors backing out, and now you're saying you're crediting a dead woman as co-founder. Have you lost your mind?" Julian leaned back in his chair, calm but pale. "No," he said evenly. "I've just found my conscience." A hush fell over the table. The first director sneered. "Conscience doesn't build phones." Julian smiled faintly. "Neither does greed. Not for long." Erica set a folder in front of him. "They want your resignation, effective immediately." The room buzzed again. Julian didn't even flinch. "Of course they do," he murmured. "They've been waiting for this." "Don't make this noble," another snapped. "You're bleeding us dry. Investors are panicking. You're destroying the brand." Julian's eyes lifted slowly. Maybe the brand deserves to be destroyed. A stunned silence followed. Even Erica froze. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket, and spoke with a quiet authority that silenced the room. "For 25 years, this company has sold itself as innovation. But the truth is, it's theft, of ideas, of dignity, of people's humanity. I mocked a woman who worked harder than I ever have, using a device my sister helped invent. That's not success. That's rot wearing a suit." Someone scoffed. "You think a speech will fix this?" Julian nodded once. "No, but it's a start." He turned to Erica. "Prepare the statement. Full credit to Lena Voss as co-founder and chief designer of the first Voss-Tech prototype. Make it public." Erica hesitated. "Julian, the board will bury you." "I'm already buried," he said softly. "Might as well dig my way up toward the light." For the first time in years, there was no arrogance in his voice, just weary honesty. A younger board member, nervous but inspired, muttered, "He's right. We can't hide this anymore." The older men glared, but something had shifted. The foundation of Voss-Tech's power, fear and silence, was cracking. Julian gathered the blueprints from his desk, tucking them under his arm. "If you want to fire me, do it. But you'll do it after the world hears the truth." He walked toward the door, ignoring the chaos erupting behind him. Erica caught up to him in the hallway. "You just declared war on your own company." Julian stopped, glancing back at the closed boardroom. "No," he said quietly. "I just declared peace with myself." And as the news alert hit every phone in the city, Amelia's cracked screen lit up, carrying her mother's name to the world for the first time. By the next morning, the world had gone mad. Voss-Tech's stock dropped 17% before noon. Talk shows tore Julian apart. Hashtags like #VossFall and Waitress Truth flooded every platform. Investors demanded his head, journalists camped outside his penthouse, and late-night comedians turned him into a punchline. But Julian didn't watch any of it. He sat alone in his apartment, the city spread out beneath him like a galaxy of broken stars. His phone, the same one he'd once flaunted as a symbol of perfection, buzzed endlessly on the counter. He didn't touch it. Erica's voice came through the intercom. "You're trending in 40 countries. We need to get ahead of this." "Let it burn," Julian said, staring at the skyline. "Excuse me." He turned, his face pale in the morning light. "I built an empire on lies. If the truth burns it down, maybe it deserves to burn." Erica stepped inside, crossing her arms. "You're not the only one who gets burned, Julian. Thousands of employees, investors, people who actually believed in you." He didn't look at her. "They believed in an image, a ghost I built out of ambition." She sighed. "You can't undo decades overnight. If you want redemption, you'll have to live through the consequences first." Julian finally faced her. "You think I don't know that? I can't sleep, Erica. Every time I close my eyes, I see her, my sister. I see the look on Amelia's face when she realized who I was. I see the waitress I mocked turning into the mirror I never wanted to face." Erica's expression softened. "Then face it. Don't hide up here." He laughed bitterly. "Face what? The cameras? The lawsuits? The ghost of my father whispering that I ruined everything?" "No," she said quietly. "Face her. The one person you owe the truth to." Amelia. He didn't respond, but the name hung between them like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. Across the city, Amelia was experiencing a different kind of storm. Her small apartment was overrun with attention she didn't want. Reporters at her door, strangers online calling her the waitress who took down a billionaire. Evan scrolled through his tablet. They're offering interviews, like actual TV stuff. Amelia shook her head. I don't want that. I didn't do this for attention. You didn't do anything wrong, he said. You told the truth. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Yeah, but truth comes with a price, and it feels like everyone else is paying it too. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Again. Please. One last conversation. I owe you more than an apology. Jay. Evan peeked over her shoulder. He's not giving up, huh? She stared at the message for a long time. Maybe he shouldn't. That evening, Julian showed up at the diner where it had all begun. No suit this time, just a dark coat, his face drawn, older somehow. The place was nearly empty. Amelia stood behind the counter, arms crossed. You have a lot of nerve coming here. I know, he said quietly. But I'm not here as a CEO. I'm here as a brother who failed his sister, and as a man trying not to fail her daughter. For the first time, his voice cracked. Amelia studied him, searching for the arrogance she hated. It was gone. What stood before her wasn't the billionaire who mocked her. It was someone hollowed out by truth. I can't fix what happened, he continued, but I can start by honoring her. I want to build something in her name. Not another company, but a foundation. For people like her. People like you. Amelia hesitated, her throat tight. You can't buy forgiveness, Julian. He nodded. I know, but I can try to earn it. Outside, flashes went off as reporters spotted him through the window. But inside, under the diner's flickering neon light, something fragile and human began to take root. The following week, Amelia's life no longer felt like her own. Her face was everywhere. Morning talk shows, podcasts, social media. The waitress who changed a billionaire's heart. She hated every headline. Strangers messaged her, calling her a hero. Others accused her of chasing fame. And every time she opened her cracked phone, it felt heavier. The symbol of everything she'd lost, and everything she never wanted to gain. The diner where she worked had turned into a circus. Customers came just to see her, snapping photos, whispering as she walked by. Even Frank, the manager, treated her differently now, like she was made of glass and gold at the same time. You're famous, Reed, he said one morning, leaning against the counter. Maybe this place is too small for you now. Amelia sighed. Fame doesn't pay rent, Frank, he smirked. No, but fame attracts money. Think about it. Sponsorships, interviews. You could sell that phone of yours and retire. She gave him a sharp look. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale, he muttered, walking away. Her stomach twisted. She'd spent her life surrounded by people who thought that way, that money could fix anything. Now she was terrified of turning into one of them. Later that afternoon, she visited the hospital. Evan's room smelled like antiseptic and cinnamon from the candle a nurse had snuck in. Her brother looked better, a little color returning to his cheeks. They say the new meds are working, he said, smiling weakly. We're gonna make it, Ames. She smiled back, but didn't answer. The truth was complicated. The hospital bills were still piling up, and every cent she made was stretched to breaking. But she couldn't tell him that, not when he needed hope more than anything. Then he added, Julian paid for my treatments, didn't he? Amelia froze. What makes you think that? Because I heard the nurses talking. They said some foundation covered everything. The Lena Fund. Her chest tightened. She hadn't spoken to Julian since that night at the diner. He'd sent no messages, made no appearances, just vanished from the headlines while the world tore his company apart. Evan continued, You should talk to him, you know. He's trying to do something good. She shook her head. Good doesn't erase what he did. Maybe not, Evan said softly, but neither does anger. That night, she sat on the apartment balcony, city lights glittering below like broken glass. She scrolled through her phone, through old messages, news articles, and finally the folder labeled Mom. She played one of the last videos. Her mother's voice filled the quiet night. "Don't let bitterness make your heart small, baby. Love is bigger than mistakes." The words hit harder than they had before. Amelia wiped a tear from her cheek. Then the phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar contact. "Lena Fund Gala. Tomorrow. You should be there." She hesitated. Part of her wanted to delete it, pretend none of this existed. But another part, the part that still believed her mother's words, whispered that maybe, just maybe, forgiveness wasn't surrender. The next evening, she stood outside the ballroom where the gala was being held. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Amelia barely noticed. Her old phone was tucked in her hand, its cracked screen reflecting the golden lights above the entrance. Inside the sign read, "The Lena Foundation, in honor of the woman who inspired change." She took a deep breath. Maybe this wasn't about forgiveness anymore. Maybe it was about finishing what her mother started. And as she stepped inside, she didn't see Julian waiting near the stage, watching her with the look of a man who finally understood what redemption truly costs. The ballroom shimmered with gold light, the kind that hides sins in soft reflections. Guests in tuxedos and glittering gowns filled the room. Glasses of champagne raised under a giant banner that read, "The Lena Foundation, empowering women in technology." Julian stood near the stage, no entourage this time. Just him, a man stripped of armor. His suit was plain, his expression tense but sincere. The crowd parted around him like he carried a ghost. In a way, he did. When Amelia entered, heads turned. She wore a simple navy dress, borrowed, not bought. Her cracked phone clutched in one hand like an anchor. The cameras flashed, but she didn't slow down. She wasn't here to be seen. She was here to understand. Julian caught her eye. For a moment, time stretched thin. He took a careful step forward. "You came." She nodded once. "I wasn't sure I should." "I wasn't sure I deserved it," he said quietly. Amelia scanned the banners, the silent auction tables covered in glossy photos of women scientists, engineers, and single mothers. "You built all this," she said. "For her?" "For you both," he answered. "For the people who she wanted to help. She used to say technology should serve kindness, not the other way around. His voice broke slightly. "I forgot what that meant." A reporter nearby tried to snap a picture, but Julian raised a hand. "No press for this conversation." They moved to a quieter corner. Amelia folded her arms. "You paid my brother's bills." He didn't deny it. "I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because I owed it." She studied him. "You think money fixes guilt?" He shook his head. "No, but it buys time. And maybe time can heal what pride destroyed." The band began to play softly, a slow, familiar melody. For a heartbeat, Julian froze. Amelia turned toward the sound. The pianist was playing the song, her mother's lullaby. Her breath caught. I found the recording," Julian said, "from your phone. We're dedicating the foundation with it tonight. It felt right." Amelia's throat tightened. "You had no right to use it." "I know," he said, voice trembling. "But I wanted the world to hear her voice, to remember the woman I forgot." She looked at him for a long time, searching for the arrogance that once filled every word he spoke. It was gone. All that remained was a man who had finally learned to listen. "Do you really believe you can make this right?" she asked softly. Julian exhaled. "No, I can't, but I can make sure her story outlives me." He gestured to the stage. "We're announcing scholarships tonight. For single mothers in tech programs, it's not enough, but it's something." Amelia's voice wavered. "She would have liked that." Julian smiled faintly. "Then maybe I finally did one thing right." The lights dimmed. The host walked on stage, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor the legacy of Lena Voss, a pioneer, an artist, a visionary, whose dream gave birth to innovation. Applause filled the room. Amelia looked down at her phone. A small crack glowed where the screen flickered. The faint light of the lullaby video still paused. It wasn't just a reminder anymore. It was a bridge between who her mother was and who she had become. Julian's voice cut through the applause. "I'd like to invite her daughter to join me on stage." The room turned toward her. Dozens of eyes, 1,000 expectations. Amelia's pulse thundered in her chest. For a moment, she wanted to run. But then she remembered her mother's last words. "Take care of him." So she walked forward, and as Julian extended his hand under the golden lights, she took it, not as forgiveness, but as acknowledgement that even broken things can be rebuilt. The applause faded slowly, replaced by the hum of whispers and the click of cameras. Amelia stood on stage beside Julian, the glare of the spotlights softening the edges of everything. It didn't feel real. For a second, she wasn't a waitress or a viral headline. She was Lena's daughter, standing where her mother's name finally belonged. Julian turned to the microphone, his voice unsteady but clear. "For decades, this company, and I, took credit for work that was never mine alone. My sister, Lena Voss, built the foundation of our technology. Her vision shaped the world long before I did." He paused, looking at the crowd. "And her daughter reminded me what real strength looks like." The audience erupted in applause again. But Amelia wasn't looking at them. Her eyes were fixed on the giant screen behind the stage, where an old photo of her mother filled the room. Smiling, young, alive. Julian stepped back, whispering, "She'd be proud of you." Amelia's throat tightened. "She'd be angry you stole her name." He nodded. "She has every right to be, but I'm trying to give it back." The host returned to the microphone, announcing a moment of silence to honor Lena's memory. The room fell quiet. Hundreds of people standing still, united by a woman they'd never met, but somehow felt they knew. When it ended, Amelia stepped toward the podium. Julian looked at her in surprise, but she just said softly, "I need to say something." The host nodded and handed her the microphone. Her voice trembled at first. "My mom used to tell me that kindness doesn't pay bills, but it builds bridges. I didn't understand that until now. For a long time, I thought dignity meant staying silent, keeping your head down, surviving. But dignity means standing up, even when your voice shakes." The room was silent, hanging on every word. "She never wanted fame," Amelia continued. "She just wanted people to create with love, to build something that helps, not hurts. I don't know if she'd forgive everything that happened, but I think she'd want us to try." Tears shimmered at the corners of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. When she finished, the applause was softer this time. Real, human, full of warmth instead of noise. Julian looked down, unable to hide the emotion breaking across his face. After the ceremony, the crowd dispersed into quiet conversations. Donors shook hands, cameras turned away, and music filled the background again. Julian found Amelia near the back of the room, her phone in her hand. "Your speech," he began. "It reminded me why she left. She couldn't live in a world ruled by pride. She chose truth over comfort." Amelia looked at him. "And now, I'm trying to do the same," he said. "The foundation isn't just her legacy. It's a chance for both of us to start over." She glanced at the phone's screen, where her mother's face smiled from the paused video. "She used to tell me, there's no such thing as too late, unless you stop trying." Julian smiled faintly. "Then I'll keep trying." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the hum of soft music and clinking glasses. The night felt fragile, like a wound finally beginning to close. As Amelia turned to leave, Julian stopped her. "There's one more thing," he said, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was a silver ring engraved with the initials LV. "I kept this," he said quietly. "Our mother gave it to me the night Lena ran away. She said one day I'd understand why she left. I think I finally do." Amelia traced the engraving with her thumb, the metal cool against her skin. "You should keep it," she said. You were the one who needed to remember her. Julian shook his head. No, you're the one who kept her alive. And as the lights dimmed and the music swelled, she slipped the ring into her pocket, carrying not just her mother's legacy, but a fragile, flickering hope that maybe family could be rebuilt after all. The morning after the gala, the world exploded again. But this time, not in applause. Every business channel, news feed and headline shouted the same message. Julian Voss steps down, Voss Tech in freefall. Amelia sat at her kitchen table, coffee gone cold, watching the news anchor narrate the downfall in real time. After admitting to falsifying company history and crediting his late sister as co-founder, Julian Voss has resigned as CEO. Stock prices continue to drop, and federal investigations are underway. She muted the TV. The silence in her apartment was suffocating. Evan appeared from his room, rubbing his eyes. It's everywhere, he said softly. They're saying he lost billions. Amelia stared at the cracked phone in her hand. He didn't lose it. He gave it up. That afternoon, reporters swarmed the steps of Voss Tech headquarters. Julian walked through them without security, wearing no tie, no pretense. His hair was damp from the rain, his expression calm, the kind of calm that only comes from exhaustion and acceptance. Mr. Voss, do you regret your confession? One reporter shouted. He stopped. No, he said. I regret the years I spent pretending to be someone worth admiring. Are you bankrupt? Another asked. Julian gave a faint smile. Just finally honest. That quote hit every front page by evening. Inside the building, Erica was packing her office when he entered. She looked up, relief mixed with sadness in her eyes. You're really doing this? I have to, he said. It's time for someone else to build something better from the wreckage. She walked over, folding her arms. You know, I've seen a lot of men fall apart when their image cracked. You're the first one I've seen look lighter afterward. He chuckled softly. When you've carried a lie for 25 years, the truth feels like oxygen. Erica hesitated, then asked, What will you do now? He looked out the window at the skyline. I'm starting a foundation full-time, the Lena Fund. It'll give scholarships, childcare support, and startup grants to women in tech. She always wanted to make space for people who never got one. Erica smiled faintly. Then maybe all this wasn't a collapse. Maybe it was a correction. Meanwhile, across town, Amelia received an envelope in the mail. No return address, just her name written in neat handwriting. Inside was a short letter. Amelia, you once told me money can't fix what's broken. You were right, but sometimes it can help others build what's new. J. A check was folded beneath it. Not for her, but made out to the hospital's children's wing, in her mother's name. She pressed the letter to her chest, feeling something she hadn't in months. Peace. That night, she walked past the same diner where she'd once been humiliated. Through the window, she could see someone else taking orders, laughing with customers. Life went on. Her phone buzzed, a text from Julian. They'll announce the new board tomorrow. I'm out completely. It's strange, but it feels right. She replied, You did the right thing. She'd be proud. 3 dots blinked. Then his response came. Maybe she'd be proud of you too. You gave her back her voice. For a while, Amelia just stood there in the drizzle, staring at her reflection in the dark glass. The girl who'd been mocked, belittled, and forgotten now looked back at herself with quiet strength. Julian's empire might have fallen, but something far greater had risen from its ashes. Truth, humility, and a legacy no amount of money could ever build. And as the rain began to fall harder, washing the city clean, Amelia whispered into the night, It's finally over. But deep down, she knew. Some endings are just beginnings wearing different clothes. Spring crept slowly into the city, soft and cautious, like it didn't want to wake the ghosts winter left behind. 3 months had passed since Julian's resignation, and the noise of scandal had faded into the hum of other headlines. But for Amelia, the echoes still lingered. The Lena Fund had gone from a headline to a movement. Scholarships were rolling out across the country. Community centers were opening in small towns under Lena's name. Every week, stories poured in. Single mothers learning to code, young girls building apps from their bedrooms, families lifted out of quiet desperation. Amelia scrolled through the foundation's website from her tiny apartment. Her mother's photo sat at the top of the homepage. The woman who believed compassion could innovate the world. It still felt surreal. Evan shuffled out from his room, wearing a hoodie and a mischievous grin. "Guess who just got cleared for light exercise?" She smiled. "Doctor finally let you off house arrest?" "Almost," he said, laughing. "They said the new meds are working great. I feel like I actually have energy again." She exhaled in relief. "That's all I ever wanted." Evan looked at her phone screen. "You've been staring at that site all morning." Amelia shrugged. "Just trying to believe it's real. Seeing Mom's name like that." He leaned against the counter. "Julian really did it. He kept his word." She nodded. "Yeah, he did." The truth was, she hadn't seen Julian in person since the gala. They'd exchanged a few messages, short and careful. She knew he was still working behind the scenes, quietly turning his wealth into something that mattered. But there was still distance, an invisible wall made of guilt and time. Later that day, she walked to the hospital to pick up some forms for Evan's follow-up appointments. When she reached the billing desk, the clerk smiled. "Miss Reed, everything's taken care of. Full balance, cleared." Amelia blinked. "Cleared? By who?" The clerk checked the record. "Anonymous donor through the Lena Fund. Happened this morning." Her breath caught. She didn't need to ask who it was. That evening, she found an envelope tucked under her apartment door. Inside was a note, written in Julian's neat handwriting. "Family doesn't disappear. It gets lost and found again. I'll be visiting tomorrow. There's something you need to see. Jay." The next day, she met him at the new Lena Community Center, the first of its kind, a renovated brick building surrounded by young volunteers planting a small garden out front. Julian was already there, dressed simply, no cameras, no entourage. "Looks good," she said, walking up beside him. He smiled faintly. "Not finished yet, but it's a start." Inside, the walls were lined with photographs of women and children who'd received grants, each story handwritten beneath the frames. At the center hung a portrait of Lena, the same photo from the gala, smiling down on everything. "She'd like this," Amelia said softly. Julian nodded. "She'd tell me it took me long enough." They shared a quiet laugh. After a moment, Julian turned to her. "You know, I used to think success was about being remembered, but looking at this, I think it's about who you lift while you're here." Amelia looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man her mother had once loved as a brother. Not the billionaire, not the scandal, just family. "Thank you," she said simply. He shook his head. "No, thank you. You reminded me who I was before money made me forget." For the first time, the air between them felt light. No guilt, no tension, just the quiet rhythm of two lives finally learning to move in the same direction. And as they stood beneath Lena's portrait, the cracks that had once divided their family began, at last, to heal. The first snow of winter came early that year, blanketing the city in a quiet white glow. Amelia walked through the park near her apartment, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The holidays were approaching, her first real season of peace in years. She had finished her last shift at the diner 2 weeks ago. The Lena Fund had offered her a position as community outreach coordinator, and though it still felt strange to have a title that didn't involve an apron, she was proud of it. Proud, and still a little scared. Her cracked phone buzzed in her coat pocket. A message from Julian. "Can we meet today? There's something I'd like to give you." She typed back. "Where?" "The old Voss estate. Noon." She hesitated. The Voss estate. the mansion where her mother had grown up before running away, a place Amelia had only heard about in fragments and rumors. Still, something inside her said yes. It was time. The estate sat on the edge of the city, surrounded by trees heavy with snow. When she arrived, Julian was waiting at the gate, wearing a dark coat and a scarf that looked far too thin for the weather. "You actually came," he said, smiling. "I said I would." He nodded and opened the gate. "There's something I want to show you." They walked down the long path toward the house, a sprawling building of stone and glass, half elegant, half lonely. Inside, it smelled faintly of dust and memory. Julian led her upstairs to a small room tucked behind the library. Sunlight streamed through the old window panes, catching dust motes in the air like slow-moving stars. In the center of the room sat a large box covered in a white cloth. "This was our mother's studio," he said softly. "After Lena left, no one touched it. Father locked it up like it never existed." He pulled away the cloth, revealing stacks of sketchbooks, old blueprints, and faded Polaroids. Amelia reached out with trembling hands, flipping through the pages. There were designs for early Voss prototypes, drawn in delicate, looping handwriting she recognized instantly. On one page, her mother had written a note in the corner. "Julian can build the world. I'll remind him to keep it kind." Amelia smiled through tears. "She still believed in you." Julian's voice broke slightly. "I wish I'd given her a reason to." He handed her a small wooden box. "I found this in the attic last week. It's yours." Inside was an old smartphone prototype, bulky, unfinished, its back engraved with the initials LRV. "She built this?" Amelia whispered. Julian nodded. "The first model, before Voss tech even existed, before the lies." Amelia traced the engraving with her thumb. The metal was cold, but alive with history. "You kept it all this time." He smiled faintly. "I thought I was keeping it to remember her, but maybe I was keeping it to find you." For a moment, the silence between them was warm, not awkward. Healing had a sound, quiet, steady, like breath returning after too long underwater. Amelia slipped the phone into her bag. "What will you do now?" Julian looked around the old studio, eyes distant. "Sell the estate. Use the money to open more centers. Maybe travel. Maybe finally learn how to live without turning everything into an empire." Amelia smiled softly. That sounds like something she'd approve of. He chuckled. "I hope so." Snow began to fall harder outside, soft flakes tapping against the glass. Julian walked her to the front door. Before she left, he handed her another envelope, small, sealed in wax. "Open it when you get home," he said. "It's the last piece of her story." Amelia nodded. "Goodbye, Julian." He shook his head. "Not goodbye. Just see you soon." As she walked down the long, snowy path, the world around her felt quiet and whole. Somewhere between loss and forgiveness, something sacred had been restored. A family, a name, a truth finally free. Amelia didn't open the envelope right away. It sat on her kitchen table for 2 days, untouched, its presence both comforting and terrifying. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because once she read it, there would be no more mysteries left. No more ghosts. Just truth. On the third night, snow drifted quietly outside her window. She brewed tea, turned off the lights, and finally broke the wax seal. Inside was a letter written in her mother's looping handwriting. The paper was yellowed, the ink faint, but the words hit like sunlight breaking through clouds. "If you're reading this, my brave girl, it means I didn't make it to see you grow up. I'm sorry for that. But don't waste your life chasing shadows of the past. Build something new. Be kind, even when the world isn't. And if your uncle ever finds his way back to you, remind him that family doesn't die. It just gets lost for a while." Amelia's breath shook. The letter was dated 20 years ago. Her mother must have written it right before her illness worsened. She folded it carefully, pressing it to her chest. "I found him, Mum," she whispered. "He's trying." The next morning, she caught the train to a small town outside the city, the one where her mother was buried. The cemetery sat on a hill, quiet and snow-covered, overlooking frozen fields. She brought flowers and, for the first time, her cracked phone. Julian was already there. He stood by the grave, hands in his coat pockets, snow gathering in his hair. He looked smaller somehow, humbled by the weight of everything. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. "I wasn't sure either," she admitted. They stood in silence for a long moment, just listening to the wind move through the trees. Julian finally spoke. "I used to come here when I was younger, before the company, before the noise. I'd stand here and talk to her, tell her things I never had the courage to say when she was alive. I stopped after Father died. I think I didn't want her to see who I'd become." Amelia crouched, brushing snow from the gravestone. The name Lena Voss Reed glinted faintly in the light. "She forgave you, you know, long before you ever asked." Julian's eyes watered. "I don't deserve that. Neither did she deserve to be forgotten," Amelia said quietly. "But she still loved you. That's the kind of person she was." He nodded, swallowing hard. Then he reached into his coat and handed her something wrapped in soft cloth. "I had this restored," he said. It was her mother's prototype phone, the one she'd taken from the estate. The screen had been fixed, the body polished, but the engraving LRV remained. When she powered it on, a small video automatically started playing. The footage was grainy, old. Lena's face filled the screen. She was sitting in that same studio, laughing softly as she spoke to the camera. "If anyone's watching this, maybe you, Amelia, or maybe even you, Julian, I want you to know something. Don't let what I built turn into a wall between you. Use it as a bridge. Build from love, not pride." Julian turned away, shoulders shaking. Amelia smiled through her tears. She planned for this. She knew we'd find each other someday. They watched the clip until it ended, the screen flickering before fading to black. Then slowly, Amelia powered the device off. "I think that's the last time it should play," she said. Julian nodded. Let her rest. Together, they buried the restored phone beside the headstone, the snow gently covering it. As they stood up, the clouds broke apart, sunlight spilling over the field, pale and bright like forgiveness itself. Julian looked at her. "She'd be proud of us." Amelia smiled softly. "I think she already is." And as the wind carried the last notes of her mother's song through the quiet air, the past, at last, found peace, found contour. A full year passed. Winter melted into spring, and the city learned how to breathe again. The story that once dominated every headline had become something quieter. No longer a scandal, but a symbol of change. People stopped saying, "the billionaire who fell," and started saying, "the man who rebuilt." Amelia stood backstage at a conference hall in San Francisco, nervously adjusting the microphone on her collar. The Lena Fund's first global summit was about to begin, an event honoring innovators, single mothers, and students who had benefited from the foundation's grants. It felt surreal. A year ago, she'd been a waitress serving tables she couldn't afford to sit at. Now she was about to address an audience of thousands. Evan poked his head in from behind the curtain. "You ready, superstar?" She laughed softly. "Not even close." "Mom would have loved this," he said, his smile tender. "And she would have told you not to trip on your way to the stage. Thanks for the vote of confidence." He grinned and disappeared into the crowd. A volunteer gestured for her to step forward. The stage lights dimmed, and Amelia walked out into the glow. The audience rose to their feet, applauding, not for fame, but for the story they'd all come to believe in. "Thank you," she began, voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "I never thought I'd stand here. My name is Amelia Reed, daughter of Lena Reed, who taught me that strength doesn't come from wealth, but from compassion. My mother didn't live long enough to see her dream grow, but she planted the seed in all of us." She paused, glancing down at the front row where Julian sat beside Evan. He looked older now, quieter, but there was peace in his eyes. "When I first met Julian," she continued, I thought he represented everything wrong with the world. Greed, pride, power without heart. And I wasn't wrong. But what I didn't see was a man who'd been raised to forget what love looked like. A man who needed to fall before he could stand for something real. Julian bowed his head slightly, humbled by the words. Today, Amelia said, the Lena Fund supports more than 3,000 women around the world. It's not about technology anymore. It's about connection. My mother believed that every invention, every success should serve people, not just profits. That's the legacy we're continuing. The crowd applauded again, warm and thunderous. When the ceremony ended, she found Julian outside on the terrace, watching the sunset stain the sky in shades of gold and rose. For a moment, they just stood there in comfortable silence. You did well, he said finally. You sound just like her. Amelia smiled. I learned from both of you, her kindness and your stubbornness, he chuckled. Dangerous combination. She leaned against the railing. Do you miss it? The company? The chaos? Julian shook his head. No. For the first time, I'm exactly where I should be. The money, the titles, they were noise. This, he gestured toward the hall behind them. This is music. Amelia nodded, eyes glistening. She'd be proud, Julian. I hope so. He looked at her, his voice soft. And I'm proud of you. You turned pain into purpose. That's rarer than genius. She laughed lightly, brushing a tear away. I had help. As night fell, the city lights flickered on below them. Bright, endless, alive. Amelia pulled her old cracked phone from her bag. The screen was dim now, the battery nearly dead. But the background photo, her mother smiling under the sun, still shone through the fractures. Julian looked at it and smiled. You kept it? Of course, she said. It's where everything started. The phone's screen flickered once, then went dark for good. Amelia didn't try to restart it. She just held it for a moment, then slipped it gently into her purse. Guess it's time to let it rest, she said. Julian nodded. Or maybe it's time to move forward. And as they walked back inside, side by side, the past finally faded into light. Not forgotten, but transformed. Proof that even broken things can build something beautiful. So that's it, my friends. Our story has come to an end. If you're still here right now, it means something in this story touched your heart, even just a little. Maybe it reminded you that forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It sets you free. Like the Stoics used to say, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Sometimes what hurts us the most isn't the past itself, but the weight of carrying it for too long. Amelia's journey shows us that no matter how broken things seem, a phone, a family, a heart, everything can be repaired when truth and love are finally allowed to speak. Julian lost his empire, but found something far greater. Peace. And peace, my friends, is the real wealth of life. If this story stirred something inside you, take a breath, look around, and remember, you're stronger than your pain, and you're never too late to start again. Now, if you felt even a spark of that truth tonight, hit that like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep telling stories that heal, remind, and connect, one heart at a time.